This morning, your soul awakens and you realize you have spent far too long fighting against the shadows of scarcity. Those voices that say, it won't work, it's not for you, it's too late. But this morning, something changes because the light of the Lord rises within you. Psalm 27 declares, "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear?" And this is the first key. Scarcity is not an external enemy, but an internal shadow. It lives where there is no light. And every time you decide to believe, even without seeing, the light of faith begins to tear through the veil of doubt. I have taught that faith is the only antidote to fear. And where there is fear, there is limitation. But where there is faith, there is expansion. The mind that decides to trust in God is like the sun rising over a dry field. Everything that seemed dead begins to flourish. Because prosperity does not begin in the pocket, it begins in consciousness. Today, you awaken not just to another day, but to a new reality. The scarcity that once surrounded you was merely a reflection of your beliefs. And when you change the belief, you change the reflection. The light that comes from God does not merely show the way, it creates the way. There is a living energy flowing in the universe, and when you align with it through faith and decision, the impossible begins to move in your direction. I call this the power of the fourth dimension, where faith and thought create reality. And the Bible calls it divine light. Both say the same thing with different words. You become what you believe. Therefore, do not accept any longer the voices that try to bind you to the past. Today, you decide to rise. Today, you say to yourself, "The Lord is my light and my salvation." Today, you declare that the darkness of scarcity no longer has authority over your life. Allow each breath to be an affirmation of abundance. Allow the first thought of your day to be, "I was born to prosper." And when this certainty grows in your heart, nothing can stop you, because those who walk with the light never stumble in the shadows. Allow yourself to experience this journey to the end, and let each word penetrate you like a prayer, a decision, and a new programming. Before proceeding, write a comment with the phrase, "The light guides me." Do it now. This is your first step of agreement. This is not just a comment, but an altar of words, a declaration of your identity. And if this message already resonates with you, like this video and subscribe to the Prosperity Rio channel as a symbolic choice for abundance. True prosperity begins when you decide to ignite the light of faith within yourself, the inner fortress. While many seek abundance externally, in opportunities, in connections, in results, few understand that the source of wealth is within the heart itself. Psalm 27 reveals, "The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid?" These words are not merely spiritual poetry. They are a command of power. When you repeat them with conviction, something within you reorganizes. The mind elevates. Fear loses strength. And scarcity begins to dissolve like mist before the sun. I have taught in my ministry that everything the human mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. But I have also warned, the mind can only believe when it is free from fear. And this is exactly what Psalm 27 does. It frees you from fear, replacing it with faith, clarity, and divine confidence. Scarcity is not just lack of money. It is lack of vision. It is when you look at life and see limitations instead of possibilities. But when the light of God illuminates the mind, it reveals paths that were always there, just covered by the shadow of doubt. At this moment, breathe deeply. Feel the presence of light. It is not distant. It is within you. You are the temple where prosperity wants to dwell. You are the fertile field where God desires to sow abundance. I have taught for decades that wealth is not the result of chance, but of a conscious decision. And the first step of this decision is to replace thoughts of scarcity with declarations of faith. It is not denying reality, it is reprogramming its meaning. Because those who live by faith are not guided by circumstances, but by purpose. From today, you cease to be a victim of darkness and become a carrier of light. You understand that you are not fighting against lack, but awakening to your power of creation. And this power comes from an unbreakable spiritual connection, the certainty that God is your source. Observe the difference between those who live in fear and those who live in faith. Fear paralyzes, faith mobilizes. Fear says it won't work. Faith says God will provide. Fear sees closed doors. Faith builds windows in the impossible. And it is in this frequency that prosperity happens. Not because things magically change, but because you change. And when your mind changes, everything around you reorganizes. Opportunities appear. Ideas flow. The right people arrive. Scarcity loses space. Because light has taken the place of darkness. In this new dawn, you are called to live in spiritual and material abundance. Not as someone who asks, but as someone who already possesses. Because the promise has already been made and the light has already been lit. God never wanted you to live in lack. He created you to reflect His own fullness. Therefore, begin your day declaring, "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Nothing shall I lack, because He guides me through abundance." And when this truth echoes within you, something changes. Faith replaces fear. Action replaces doubt. And prosperity ceases to be a distant dream to become your inevitable reality. The silent war. Before every victory, there exists a silent war. And this war does not happen out there. It happens within you. It is the battle between the voice of faith and the whisper of scarcity, between the light that calls you upward and the shadows that try to bind you to the ground. How many times have you felt that you were giving your best and yet nothing flowed? You worked, prayed, believed, and yet it seemed that heaven remained silent. This is the darkness of scarcity, the time when God trains you to ignite your own light. Psalm 27 reminds us, though an army encamp against me, my heart shall not fear. This army is not always made of people. Sometimes it is made of thoughts. I am not capable. I do not deserve. It will not work. These thoughts are invisible soldiers of scarcity, and they attack the mind every day, trying to suffocate the light that God placed within you. In my years of ministry, I have seen what I call the phantoms of fear. The fear of poverty, the fear of criticism, the fear of failure. And I have taught that these phantoms only disappear when you make a definitive decision, the decision to live by faith and not by doubt. But this decision is not easy. It requires courage, because faith is the only territory where fear cannot live. And when you begin to act by faith, the spiritual world moves in your favor, but the physical world tests your conviction. It is at this point that many give up. They give up because they do not understand that scarcity is not the end, it is the test of light. It comes to ask, do you really believe? And when you respond with action, even without seeing the result, you send to the universe the most powerful message that exists. I trust. Trust is the seed of wealth. It is what transforms thoughts into matter, ideas into opportunities, faith into results. I have taught that persistence is the true miracle of wealth. And this persistence is born from the certainty that even in the valley of shadow, God is your fortress. The problem is that the mind, accustomed to scarcity, seeks security, not growth. It prefers the known, even if small, to the unknown that can multiply. And this is why most people live in circles, because they have not understood that faith requires movement. Psalm 27 continues saying, one thing I ask of the Lord, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life. To dwell in the presence of God is to dwell in abundance. It is to be in communion with the source that provides all. But to remain there requires renewing the mind every day. You must choose the light even when the surroundings seem dark. Scarcity tries to convince you that you are small, that your story is over, that the promises will not be fulfilled. But when you look within and declare, the Lord is my light and my salvation, fear dissolves, because there is no darkness that can resist a mind ignited by faith. I have taught that the mind is the only instrument that can transform poverty into power. And God confirms this by reminding you that you have within you the divine spark of creation. Each thought aligned with faith is a seed planted in the garden of abundance. And the more you water this seed with action and gratitude, the faster it flourishes. So when fear tries to stop you, remember, it is only a reflection of the past. You are no longer who you were. You are who you decided to be from today. And this decision made with faith changes the course of your destiny. Inner scarcity does not disappear with force, but with light. It is not conquered by shouting, but by believing. And this is why Psalm 27 is a silent cry of power. Wait for the Lord, be of good courage, and He shall strengthen your heart. Faith does not merely illuminate the path, it builds the path. And when you remain firm, even in the face of darkness, something magnificent happens. Your own mind transforms into a spiritual fortress where divine wealth finds dwelling. The sacred instant of transformation. There is a sacred instant when everything changes, not because circumstances changed, but because you changed within. It is the moment when the mind stops fighting against darkness and begins to ignite the light. Psalm 27 reveals this secret. Though I walk through a valley of shadow, the Lord will hide me in His tabernacle. He will conceal me in the secret place of His sanctuary. Notice, it is not about fleeing from darkness, it is about carrying light within it. Scarcity may try to surround you, but it cannot touch those who understand that prosperity is a spiritual state before being a physical result. I have taught throughout my ministry that adversity brings with it the seed of equivalent benefit. This means that the same moment that makes you fall can be what teaches you to fly. And when you change the way you look at the problem changes form before you. Scarcity ceases to be an enemy. It becomes the mirror that shows you where light is still lacking. And when you ignite this light, the light of faith, courage, confidence, everything begins to align. At this point in the journey, something powerful happens within you. The mind that once feared tomorrow now believes. The soul that once felt empty now fills with certainty. The heart that once cried for help now emanates gratitude. Psalm 27 ends with a promise. Wait for the Lord, be of good courage, and He shall strengthen your heart. These words are the climax of the spiritual journey. Waiting with faith is the most active act that exists. Because while the world thinks you are standing still, the universe is moving in your favor. I have witnessed that the greatest mistake people make is giving up one step before success. It is when the tunnel seems darkest that the exit is closest. And God confirms this when He teaches you to wait, not in despair, but in power. The light of prosperity does not come as a miracle that falls from heaven. It is born within those who learned to trust even without seeing. Because when faith remains firm, it creates a field, and everything that vibrates in faith begins to attract what vibrates in abundance. And then suddenly the impossible begins to move. Doors that were locked open silently. Paths that seemed closed draw themselves before you. The mind becomes a lighthouse, attracting ideas, people, and opportunities. This is where you understand the true power of the Psalms word. The Lord is my light and my salvation. It is not just a phrase, it is a spiritual code. Every time you repeat it with faith, it activates within you the same power that created the heavens and the earth. You become co-creator of your reality. I call this the state of conscious mental vibration, the moment when thought, emotion, and faith become one energy. And when this happens, scarcity completely loses power because it can only live where there is doubt. Now you understand, prosperity is not a prize, it is a reflection. It is the reflection of the light you decided to ignite and keep lit even when everything seemed dark. You no longer need to chase abundance. It begins to seek you, because where there is light, everything grows. Where there is faith, everything flourishes. Those who awaken the light of faith become a living lighthouse, and wherever they pass, darkness dissipates, hope renews, and fruits multiply. You are no longer someone trying to prosper. You are the very manifestation of prosperity. The illuminated mind is the greatest wealth that exists. And when it aligns with the presence of God, the impossible becomes routine. Today, the light that was only lit within you begins to overflow. And it not only illuminates your path, it lights paths for others. You become living proof that faith is the richest force that exists. The victory of light. Light has conquered, and now everything that seemed impossible begins to make sense. Prosperity was not something distant, nor a favor reserved for a few. It was always within you, waiting for the right moment to emerge. Psalm 27 was the password. The words, "The Lord is my light and my salvation," were not just comfort, they were an awakening. Today, you understand that scarcity was never lack of resources, but lack of clarity. And when the mind aligns with the light of God, everything that is dense, heavy, and confusing begins to dissipate. Through the principle I have taught of the fourth dimension, I show that this is the mental state of abundance, the point where thought and faith unite to create concrete results. The universe responds to the dominant thoughts of the mind, and now your mind vibrates faith, confidence, and certainty. You have ceased merely desiring prosperity and begun living as someone prosperous. Scarcity fed on fear, but you no longer have fear, because when the light of God surrounds you, there is no shadow that can reach you. You understand that prospering is a way of honoring the Creator. It is manifesting divine greatness in the form of action, work, ideas, and generosity. Abundance is the reflection of your spiritual connection. And the more you connect, the more everything flows. Because prospering is not accumulating. It is allowing the divine energy of flow to pass through you. It is being a channel, not a dam. It is being light, not shadow. At this instant, something profound happens. Your consciousness expands. You cease asking for help and begin thanking for the victory that is already yours. The fear that once dominated you is now just a memory of an ancient time. You no longer need to fight against scarcity because it has already been conquered. Psalm 27 ends with a promise of strength. Wait for the Lord, be of good courage, and He shall strengthen your heart. And this strengthening is what you feel now. The certainty that God dwells in you and that everything you touch with faith and purpose will prosper. The light that broke through the darkness did not merely free you, it transformed you into a source of light for the world. As I have taught in my ministry, you are the master of your destiny, the captain of your soul. And now you understand the true meaning of these words. Destiny is not chance. It is the result of faith in action. The soul is not a burden. It is a divine spark that when ignited, illuminates everything around it. So in this new dawn, declare with conviction, I am light, I am prosperity, I am the living expression of God's abundance. And feel the divine presence surrounding you, guiding you, and strengthening you. From today, you no longer walk in shadows. You are the very light that illuminates the path. The call to action. At this moment, the light of prosperity has already been ignited within you. You have heard, felt, and understood that God is your source and that no shadow can remain where there is faith. Now is the time to transform this revelation into movement. Because faith without action is merely desire, but faith with action is creation. I have taught that the greatest secret of wealth is to act with decision before seeing the result. And this is exactly what God expects from you, a decision. Not a passing emotion, but a firm step that says to the universe, I trust. Psalm 27 taught you not to fear, not to retreat, to remain in the divine presence even amid scarcity. Now, this presence manifests through your courage to act. You do not need to understand everything. You need only believe enough to take the first step. Today, decide that your mind will be the dwelling place of light. Decide that no word of defeat will have space anymore. Decide that prosperity is not a distant promise, but an inevitable harvest for those who plant faith every day. From this instant, each of your choices becomes a seed of abundance. The way you speak, think, work, and pray defines the garden you will harvest. And if you want a garden of prosperity, plant faith, declare victory, water with gratitude. I have taught in my church that gratitude is the most powerful magnet in the universe. And the Bible confirms this when it declares, wait for the Lord, be of good courage, and He shall strengthen your heart.